Leave it to Gen Z to rebrand laziness and social awkwardness as something cutesy, like a stay-at-home son. They did much the same thing with quiet quitting, where you can go to work and do less, and if you call it quiet quitting, it's somehow better. But Laura, I gotta tell you, this is also a big problem when it comes to, I think, declining birth rates, people not getting married and having children. You know, that's a big problem. They blame it on women. Well, look at what young women have to choose from. The pickings are slim. Yes, we might have a feminism problem in America, but it's the feminization of men. There are a lot of young women out there that want to get married. They want to have kids. They want to have stable families. But there are a lot of young men out there who want to live in mama's basement and order DoorDash. And therein lies a big part of the problem.
I remember being a teenager and I just could not wait to grow up. I hated having to take the bus. I hated not having a car, having to go to school, I wanted to have a job, make money. But what's funny is now that I'm an adult, I've noticed that adults don't like being adults. It's this weird thing that I noticed. Once I had an internship at this office, I noticed how nobody wants to be there. And when you ask these people oh, do you like your job? Obviously, they're going to put on their good boy mask and say, yes, I love this job, sir. I've been dreaming about sitting in this cubicle corner like a slave for 60 hours a week from the moment I was born. From the moment I was born, I wanted to be in that cubicle. Obviously, they'll give you an answer like that. But the reality is these people, they never talked about work. They always talked about college, which was 10 years or 20 years ago for them because these people were well into their 30s, 40s. They constantly talked about, the next holiday or the last holiday or the upcoming weekend or the upcoming football game. Or it was always something upcoming. It's like they never talk about something that's, present in the moment. And if you've studied anything about mental health, then you know that being present is quite literally one of the most important things. So once I noticed that these people were basically never present, I noticed that, yeah, they might tell you they like their job, but their actions show you that they don't. And this is how it is for most people. The reality is growing up is just boring and depressing. Now, I do want to specify that you should have responsibility when you get older. So, for example, you should learn how to drive a car, right? You can't be in your 30s and not know how to drive a car because in the modern day society, you need to know how to do this to get to places. The same thing goes for knowing how to cook. Otherwise, you're going to starve or you're going to have to rely on slop food that is very bad for you. So there are, certain responsibilities that you need to have once you get older. When I say growing up, is this whole fakery, this whole acting as if you're happy and not being yourself. This is something that I've actually thought about quite a lot recently because a lot of people disagree with the statement that you should just be yourself. I agree with it 100%, 1000%. Now that does depend on how you interpret the definition of, being yourself. Most of society, when they say just be yourself, they have this vision in their head where you're this kind, happy, yes man type of dude. And if that is who you are, by the way, that is who you should be. But the reality is for a lot of us, that is not who we naturally are. We were shaped like this by society because every single Disney movie, every single ad on YouTube, just the media in general shapes you into being this obedient, nice, good boy or a slave, as you might say. I remember when I was this type of person, I was just utterly, completely depressed to the point that I almost roped. When I see that the vast majority of roping, let's just say, has been done by men, I just shrug because it's well, no shit. Most men don't like being like this. Most men, in their natural habitat are more aggressive. They're more outgoing. They're more, spontaneous. They want to do stuff. They don't like this whole, just sit in your corner and take as little place as possible and raise your hand when you want to go to the toilet. That's not how most men naturally are. The reason most of us end up like this good, obedient dogs is because this is how you get trained to be in, the education system or at home by your parents. The thing is, this actually does work for women. Women are, I know it sounds controversial, but women are naturally more obedient than men. This is why women also perform better in the modern society. By almost every single metric, women are outperforming men right now, at least young men. And that is because the modern society is literally made for women. The modern society where if you just obey, if you don't say anything back, if you just do your work and that's it, Those are the type of characteristics that get rewarded. You know, unfortunately, most men, we don't fall in this category.
Give a single girl
Yeah.
some dating advice. What would you say to her?
Just bang them all. Because men are so immature that you're not gonna lock anyone down. Don't even start thinking yet about the husband stuff.
Near the start of college, so this was like 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I started changing significantly. I started becoming more selfish. I started becoming more, you know, you might say an asshole. I stopped saying randomly like bless you or whatever, or thank you or and again, I know like I've gotten hate over this in the past, but this is just who I am. I don't like being this overly nice dude. I don't know, it could be because I grew up with a lot of negative reinforcement. The point is this is not who I naturally am, and that is also who I stopped being. And once I stopped being that person, I was happier. In fact, right now I'm the happiest I've ever been. What's interesting is that, you know, if you look at the average Redditor or whatever, they would tell you that, oh, people who are assholes they're unhappy and they're projecting. I think these people who are saying that are projecting. I think these people are unhappy. The reason why I am happier being this guy than, you know, growing up and just be normal is that it gets tiring. Like anybody who has had a job, for example, where you always have to wear a mask, you know that it gets tiring because it's not normal. It's not normal for you to sit there and never make a joke because, you know, you might think, oh, I'm gonna offend some people. You're always gonna offend someone when you make a joke. That's like the reality. There's always gonna be at least one guy in the room who, you know, doesn't share your humor. It's just the way things are. Unfortunately, we are told in the modern day society that, you know, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to offend people, Timmy. And so now you can't make jokes.
I'm not as concerned about them as I am as the failure to launch 30-year-olds, which I think that's also a real thing. Like, grow up, get a job, get a wife, build a family.
Finally, the main reason why I think growing up is just completely useless is that growing up is part of the boomer plan. So the boomer plan is, you know, you go to school, you get a job, you get a wife, get children, and, you know, that's it, that's life. So some people think this is a boring life, which I disagree. I think this is a fantastic life. Unfortunately, this life was stolen from us. Like, if you're Gen Z, most of us are never gonna have this life. Like, it's gotten so bad that you remember Homer from The Simpsons? The creators from that show, they wanted to depict Homer as this loser, you know, he's lazy and his wife is doing everything. But if you're watching The Simpsons as a Gen Zer, then you realize that Homer is a winner. He has his own house. He got a family. Like, he basically, you know, completed life, quote unquote. Most of us will never own a home. Most of us, you know, the retirement plan is, I don't think it's gonna last like when we get older, so that's not gonna exist either. And that leaves me with this question. If I don't get the benefits of growing up, then why should I grow up? You have to realize that almost everything in life is a transactional thing. You do something and then you expect something in return. I know like a lot of guys were told this lie that, for example, if you're nice to a girl, you shouldn't expect something in return. But that is untrue. If she's not giving you anything back, then you block her, you move on. That's it. That is how you should be. And it's the same thing with growing up. If I don't get the benefits of growing up, then for who am I going to be this little goody guy for? Like, the whole moral system, in my opinion, is completely falls apart because we live in a godless society. And if you think about it, morals do come from religion. So we live in a godless society where people worship Satan, and you're still being told, you know, to be good guy, to be obedient, to be nice. And it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, who am I going to be nice for? Like, give me one. Like, honestly, I want somebody to comment and give me one reason why I should be nice. Because I know I've gotten some backlash, like saying that I'm kind of like a douchebag asshole. But give me one reason why I should be. And don't tell me the whole, oh, for yourself. Nobody does anything for themselves. Anyone who's actually done some journaling or some, you know, thinking about life, you realize that almost everything we do is for somebody else. You know, a good example is the gym. People say that they go to the gym for themselves. That's not true. 99% of the guys go to the gym because A, they want to get girls, or B, they want to get respect because when you're bigger, men won't pick on you. And you can apply the same logic to every facet of life. People don't just do things for themselves. That's bullshit. Nobody does anything randomly for themselves. This is why people who are married and have kids, also perform way better because they have a reason to do things. You know, even people like David Goggins, for example, you know, this generation loves to call this guy the hardest man or whatever. David Goggins wouldn't even do one pull-up if he didn't have a girlfriend or a child. Because I've read his book, and every time life got hard for him, he would always bring up, oh, then I remember my daughter and this and that, and it's like, this is just how humans are wired. It's how men are wired. If you take away the main thing why we do things, then why would I do the main thing in the first place? It doesn't make sense. If I do X, I expect Y. If I don't get Y, then why the fuck would I do X? This is why I'm probably never going to be like a nice, kind gentleman again, because I see no reason to become that guy anymore. In fact, the modern day society rewards douchebags more. I've literally gotten more success in school, women, even YouTube. The modern day society rewards this behavior that I'm showing you right now, this chaotic, reckless behavior where you're not a good boy. So I want to end this video with giving you a very good example of how like men used to be, your great grandfather or whatever. So my father in Afghanistan got married quite late. So the average marriage over there is like 18 for men at least. But he got married at 23, 24, he said. So that's actually quite late. The reason he married quite late is because he was in the army. You know, he wanted to just like be more playful, fool around, stuff like that. Like not sleeping around. You can't really sleep around. There's no dating in that country. Something that I noticed is that my dad completely turned around once he got married. Now, some people in the West say that that is like weird behavior. I actually disagree. I think turning around, changing your personality for your family is a good thing. I think those are the only people in your life you should change your personality for. You know, for your son, for your wife. Like, those are the only people that you should value. I think the modern society is weird where we change our attitudes for our bosses, for these companies. You know, the same thing with women, right? Women have been so brainwashed this last generations, like for the past 60 years, that, you know, being a housewife is the equivalent of being a slave. And I'm just thinking, what do you think you are working for some boss? Do you think that boss sees you as this strong, independent woman? Like, no, you're just a cog in a machine like the rest of us. And I noticed this whole behavior in general. Like, I think the only reason you should grow up is if you have a family, if you have kids. Those are people that were, yeah, if I had a son, I would need to change because this reckless behavior that I'm showing right now, you know, I wouldn't be a good example for my son. But if I have no son, then why the fuck, for who am I going to change? Like, that is my main point. Why would I change for my boss? I'm not going to. Like, at my internship, I went home about like 30 minutes earlier because I had to catch the train. And I remember at first they didn't like that, but I just kept doing it. And eventually, you know, that just became part of who I am. And you might think that towards the end, they're going to say, oh, that means that they're not going to like you. They're not going to employ you. Yes, they did. They did offer me a job. These companies like assertive behavior like that. You know, again, reinforcing this belief that being chaotic is more rewarding in modern day society. But yeah, that's just the conclusion of the video, man. I'm just struggling finding out why I should be good and, you know, who for. I'm gonna be honest, I'm completely lost. Like, right now I have zero morals, which some people see as bad, but yeah, I see zero reason to have morals in the first place. Modern society rewards people who have no morals, first of all. Second of all, who am I going to be an example for? You know, that is like a main reason for you to be quote unquote good. It's because you want to be an example for your son, for your daughter. Okay, what if I don't have a son or a daughter? Game over. Like, do you get where I'm getting at? It just doesn't make sense. This whole grow up thing doesn't make sense. It made sense when the boomers left. Yeah, because everything played out perfectly for them. But when things don't play out perfectly for you, then the grow up thing also doesn't make sense. That's the video. I could be yapping about this for hours. But yeah, if you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like and a comment. That's the video.